Hello, my name is Madeline Van Basten Battenberg. This is my assessment for Assessment 1, ACR204, Crime, Media and Justice. The focus of this assessment is on the pajama girl, Linda Agostini, who was murdered in 1934 and whose body was discovered on the side of the road in Albury, New South Wales. So to begin my presentation, I'm just going to give a quick rundown of the events of the pajama girl's death and the media reporting and speculation that followed. In 1934, on the first day of September, the body of a young woman was discovered in a culvert on a stretch of road outside Albury in New South Wales. The woman was discovered by a man walking cattle along the strip of the road. The body was badly charred, almost to the point of unrecognition. She had been killed by a single bullet wound to the neck and had severe head injuries. Her body had been stuffed in an old wheat sack before being dumped. The young woman was wearing Chinese-style pajamas when she was found, hence how she got her nickname Pajama Girl. Her identity was unable to be established immediately after the discovery of her body due to how badly burnt it was. Her husband, Antonio Agostini, was questioned. However, he stated that his wife had left him and he had nothing to do with the murder. She was taken to Sydney University, where she was preserved in a bath of zinc-lined formalin. Her body was basically on display for the world to see and help identify her, but it quickly turned into a local attraction. Her body lay in the bath for 10 years until early 1944. On March 4, 1944, Antonio, her husband, was called into the police station for an interview, where he confessed to the murder of his wife, Linda Agostini. He claimed that he had accidentally shot her after a disagreement they had, panicked and drove over the border of New South Wales before dumping her body. Upon the discovery of the pajama girl's body, the media basically went into overdrive. So the event was reported with the use of emotive language, which I believe would have been an attempt to evoke sympathy within the readers. The murder was described as ghastly, foul, and a tragic discovery. The murder of the pajama girl was one of the first cold case murders of the time, hence why there was so much interest in it and so much publicity surrounding it. The reporting of such a perplexing and macabre event needed to use words, like very emotive words, for people to gain an understanding of what really happened. If they described it as just, oh, a girl died, then people wouldn't feel scared. Whereas if they say ghastly, foul, and tragic, people would be scared that something could happen to them like that. One particular headline was "Girl's Body in Culvert." Upon reading this, my mind adverted to how lonely she must have been in that culvert and how there would have been little dignity in the disposal of her body. And dignity is something that everyone deserves to die with. So the media at this time would have used all this language and reported it in such a way to get sympathy and for people to really feel how Linda was feeling when she died. Alright, so now I'll focus my attention to how the offender was depicted. So there was so much mystery surrounding the death of the pajama girl and the discovery of her body, so no one really focused on who the killer was. The killer was rarely talked about in the initial stages of reporting the case by the media. The media touched on what the police had said, that they believed her body had been brought there by motor car, but that was the extent to which the offender was reported until after he'd been caught. So once Linda's husband, Antonio Agostini, had been caught, he was the murderer, there was no real focus on him, really. Like, the media just said, oh, killer's been caught. There was no what an awful man he was or anything. It was just that the killer had been finally caught, so Linda could be laid to rest. That the mystery girl could be finally laid to rest with peace and dignity. So the offender didn't get talked about much, which is quite different to nowadays, where when we hear of someone's death, all that is really talked about is the offender, what they did, what their background is, what their criminal history is, and what type of person they are. So now I'm going to move on to how the pajama girl, Linda Agostini, how she was depicted as a victim. So when her body was first discovered, there was a lot of mystery surrounding it. And because they didn't know who she was, they had to use appearance to describe her, basically. So the media focused more on her appearance and what facial features she had, rather than her backstory, what she could have achieved in her life, if she'd been a mother. Her face was described as that of a pretty girl, and the rest of herself described as a pretty fair-haired girl. Now, I understand that there was a use for all these physical descriptions as they were trying to identify her. However, it's interesting to see that the techniques used by the media back then and how they have not changed drastically today. Because when the media gets hold of a case where a woman has died, it's not about what she's achieved in life. It's more about, was she pretty? Was she skinny? Did she have children? Was she a caring daughter? Etc. So when Linda was found, she was wearing exotic silk pajamas, which would have given the public the illusion that she may have been affluent society, adding to more generalizations. As she lay in a bath of formalin for 10 years, she was described as a sleeping beauty, some sort of mythical aura that was to remain untouched until someone came to claim her. So there was this untouchable feeling around her, that she was this beauty that couldn't be touched and that no one could be around, really. So now I'm going to discuss the media prejudice, which is a huge thing given the evolution of media in today's society and back when Linda was found. So the media still reports missing women in the same way as they did with the pajama girl, but I personally believe that today's reporting is actually worse. The media jumps at the chance to talk about the features of a victim, such as attractiveness and personality, yet they often leave out accomplishments in life. Today, more questions are asked into the disappearance and murder of a female victim, such as, was she walking alone? What clothes was she wearing? Did she ask for the attack? The media knows that everyone loves a good sob story, and they know how to evoke sympathy within the readers. So when Alison Baden Clay, the woman who was killed by her husband, disappeared, the headline read, "Loving mother of two disappears," not "intelligent and bilingual businesswoman." Compare this to how male victims are depicted, and it paints a very different picture. If the pajama girl case was to happen today, questions such as, was she alone, would be asked, and if she was having marital troubles at home. The pretty bobbed-haired depiction of her would be splashed all over the media. It is sad that the media still focuses on the physical appearance of female victims rather than their intelligence or life achievements. When Jill Meagher was brutally raped and murdered in 2012, all the media asked was, why did she walk alone? What was she wearing? Cases like this anger me, as it shouldn't be a woman's responsibility to watch out for herself and not wear revealing clothes. Rather, it should be broadcast to males that raping and murdering is not okay. So that there was media prejudice at the time, but I don't think a lot of people had the education to see it, whereas we do now. So there have been some developments in the case since 1944 when Antonia Agostini was charged with her murder. There was a lot of debate about whether the young woman was actually Linda Agostini, as a number of women had been reported missing around the time of her death, and there were errors on the part of the police with dental casts and examinations. In 2004, police stated that the case would not be reopened despite new DNA evidence, as Agostini had confessed. 2 movies were made about her death and her investigation, one in 1939 and one in 1977. I haven't seen these, but I would like to watch them to be able to further understand the case and see how the media was portrayed in the movie and what the media did. So in conclusion, I think that the media played a role in her death, and it did obviously help to identify her and get across the message what had happened. I don't think that the media was a bad thing back then with how they reported it, but I think that now if something had happened like that, there would be more questions asked, and women in society would feel more scared, because I think there is more danger now than there is before. Thank you for listening. Just on this slide and the next slide are my references that I used for this assignment.